The grill hisses. Orders fly. Steam rises like smoke signals in a war zone most people will never understand. Maria keeps her head down, knife moving with surgical precision through onions that never make her cry. Each cut identical, each motion calculated. No wasted energy, no wasted time. Derek struts through the line, clipboard clutched like a weapon, hunting for problems the way predators hunt weakness. His shoes click against the tile floor. Authority performed for an audience that stopped caring months ago. Move faster, Maria. This isn't your village kitchen back home. She doesn't look up, doesn't respond. Her blade never pauses. The other cooks snicker. They've heard this routine before, the daily ritual of putting the new girl in her place, the immigrant who talks funny and takes orders without fighting back. They don't see what Derek doesn't see. The way Maria's eyes track every movement in the kitchen, the way she positions herself with clear sightlines to both exits. The military posture disguised as submission. They think they know her story. Quiet woman from somewhere else, grateful for any job, willing to absorb whatever treatment comes her way. They're about to learn they don't know her at all. 3 months ago, Maria walked through those kitchen doors carrying nothing but a knife roll and hope. Broken English, stumbling over simple requests. Careful movements that screamed inexperience to everyone watching. Derek sized her up in 30 seconds. Another immigrant who needed constant supervision. Another charity case the owner probably hired to feel good about himself. Someone who'd work cheap and never complain. "You understand English, right?" he asked on that first day, speaking slowly like she was a child. "This is a real kitchen. Fast pace. High standards." Maria nodded, said nothing. Let him explain things she'd understood perfectly the first time. The other line cooks followed Derek's lead the way sheep follow shepherds. If the boss treated her like she was fragile, then fragile she must be. If he spoke to her like she was slow, then slow she was. "Maria, honey, you're holding the knife wrong," Jenny called out during her second week, voice dripping with condescension. "Here, let me show you." Maria handed over her blade without argument, watched Jenny demonstrate a grip she'd mastered 15 years ago in basic training, nodded like she was learning something new. Nobody noticed the way she held her shoulders. Military straight. Ready for anything. Nobody saw how her eyes swept the room when she thought no one was looking. Counting people. Memorizing exits. Old habits that die harder than respect. They missed the small acts of competence that should have given them pause. The way she organized her station with tactical efficiency. The way she moved through tight spaces without bumping anyone, like she'd navigated far more dangerous terrain. The way she stayed calm when orders backed up and everyone else started sweating. "Lucky guess," Derek muttered when she suggested a fix for the walk-in cooler that had been acting up for weeks. Her solution worked perfectly. He never asked how she knew. When she caught a falling knife by the handle instead of jumping away, Derek shrugged it off. "Good reflexes, I guess." When she efficiently stopped a grease fire with the precision of someone who'd dealt with far worse emergencies, he barely looked up from his clipboard. "Clean that up better next time." The pattern established itself like rust on metal. Slow, persistent, corrosive. Derek made his rounds every day, clipboard in hand, looking for reasons to assert his authority. Maria's station became his favorite target. Always something wrong. Always something that needed fixing. "Clean this again. I don't know how you did things over there, but here we have standards." She'd clean it again. Say nothing. Let him feel important. "Your knife work is too slow. We're not making art here. We're feeding customers." Her knife work was faster and more precise than anyone else's. But she'd nod. Speed up just enough to avoid another lecture, never enough to make him look foolish. "Maria, you're using too much salt. Taste your food before you season it." She'd been tasting every dish, adjusting seasoning with the precision of someone who'd fed thousands of soldiers in conditions where mistakes meant people went hungry. But she'd taste again, adjust again. Let him think he was teaching her something. The other staff picked up on the dynamic, started treating her like Derek's assessment was gospel truth. Eye rolls when she asked questions about procedures she wanted to understand, not because she couldn't figure them out. sighs when she double-checked orders, mistaking thoroughness for incompetence. She's sweet, Jenny told the news server during Maria's 6th week, but she's still learning basic stuff. Don't expect too much. Maria heard every word, said nothing, kept working. The breaking point should have come sooner. Any reasonable person would have snapped under the constant erosion of dignity. The daily reminders that she was considered less capable, less intelligent, less valuable than everyone around her. But Maria had learned patience in places where losing your temper could get people killed. She'd learned to absorb criticism from officers who knew less than she did about logistics, about leadership, about keeping people alive when everything went wrong. She understood something Derek and his followers didn't. Real strength doesn't announce itself. Real competence doesn't need validation from people too blind to recognize it. So she endured. Day after day, insult after insult, watching Derek puff himself up by tearing her down, watching the other cooks follow his lead like children mimicking playground bullies. She absorbed it all with the quiet grace of someone who'd faced actual enemies in actual combat. Someone who knew the difference between real threats and petty workplace politics. But even the strongest steel has a breaking point. Even the most disciplined soldier has limits. Derek was about to discover what happens when you push too hard for too long, when you mistake quiet endurance for weakness, when you confuse careful restraint with inability to fight back. The busy Friday night started like any other. Orders flying in faster than the kitchen could handle them. Derek losing control of the flow, but refusing to admit it. His voice getting sharper with each backed-up ticket. His authority cracking under pressure he wasn't equipped to handle. "Maria, you're slowing everyone down," he snapped, waving his clipboard like a battle flag. "Maybe fast food is more your speed. Something more, suited to your skill level." The other cooks snickered. The same tired joke they'd been laughing at for months. The immigrant who couldn't keep up. The woman who didn't belong in their kitchen. Maria's hands never stopped moving. Still perfectly executing every dish. Still maintaining the precision that kept her station running smoothly while chaos erupted around her. Still doing her job with the quiet excellence that everyone chose to ignore. But something shifted in her eyes. A flicker of something Derek had never seen before. Something that should have warned him he was playing with forces beyond his understanding. The humiliation sat heavy in the air, thick as the steam rising from the grill, dense as the smoke that would soon change everything. Maria absorbed this insult like all the others. Let it settle into the growing weight of disrespect she carried without complaint. But deep inside, where her real training lived, where her actual strength waited, something began to stir. The quiet woman who'd been taking his abuse for 3 months was about to remind everyone that still waters run deeper than anyone imagined. That the person you underestimate might be the one who saves your life when everything falls apart. Derek kept barking orders, drunk on his own authority, completely unaware that he was about to meet the real Maria Santos, the one who'd been hiding behind careful English and careful deference, the one who'd been waiting for the moment when being quiet was no longer an option. That moment was coming faster than he could imagine. You want to know who Maria Santos really is? Not the woman Derek sees scrubbing pans and chopping vegetables. Not the immigrant everyone assumes is grateful for whatever scraps of respect they throw her way. Sergeant First Class Maria Santos, 82nd Airborne Division. 3 tours in Afghanistan. Army logistics officer who kept supply lines running while mortars fell like deadly rain around her forward operating base. She managed convoys through Taliban territory, where one wrong turn meant death for everyone under her command. Coordinated helicopter resupply missions under fire, calculating fuel loads and ammunition requirements while bullets cracked overhead. Fed 3,000 soldiers daily in conditions that would break most people before breakfast. Maria planned operations that moved millions of pounds of equipment across hostile terrain. She did it with precision that kept people alive and efficiency that kept the war machine running. Her radio call sign was Iron Horse 6 because nothing stopped her supply trains. Nothing. She earned a Bronze Star for keeping her convoy moving when insurgents hit them with an IED outside Kandahar. Truck burning, 2 soldiers wounded, enemy fire coming from 3 directions. While her driver applied pressure to a sucking chest wound, Maria called in air support, coordinated medical evacuation, and rerouted the remaining vehicles to complete their mission. The citation reads, Sergeant Santos displayed exceptional leadership under extreme combat conditions, ensuring mission success while preserving the lives of personnel under her command. Derek thinks she's slow because she double-checks orders. In Afghanistan, double-checking meant the difference between soldiers eating hot meals and soldiers going hungry in 100-degree heat. Triple-checking meant ammunition reached the front lines instead of sitting useless in some supply depot. The careful way she organizes her station? That's how you arrange equipment when disorganization kills people. Every knife in its place because when mortars start falling, you don't have time to hunt for tools. Every ingredient positioned for maximum efficiency because wasted motion in a combat zone is wasted life. Her quiet English isn't ignorance, it's calculation. When you've briefed generals and coordinated with NATO allies, you learn that speaking carefully prevents misunderstandings that cost lives. Better to think before you talk than to talk before you think. The way she never argues with Derek's criticism? She's dealt with officers who knew less about logistics than she'd forgotten. Colonels who'd never loaded a truck or planned a convoy route telling her how to do her job. You learn to nod, say, yes, sir, and do what actually works when they're not watching. Maria understands authority in ways Derek never will. Real authority isn't performed with clipboards and loud voices. It's earned through competence under pressure. It's proven when people's lives depend on your decisions, and those decisions keep people breathing. She's commanded soldiers twice Derek's age. Men who'd been in combat longer than Derek's been managing restaurants. Tough, experienced fighters who followed her orders without question, because they knew she'd get them home alive. In Helmand Province, her supply depot came under rocket attack during the middle of a resupply operation. Fuel trucks loaded with 10,000 gallons of diesel. Ammunition pallets stacked 20 feet high. One direct hit would have vaporized everything within 200 meters. Maria didn't panic, didn't freeze, didn't delegate the dangerous work to someone else. She grabbed a fire extinguisher and ran toward the flames while everyone else ran away. Organized bucket brigades to cool the fuel trucks. Coordinated the safe evacuation of explosive materials while rockets kept falling. Saved millions of dollars in equipment and probably 50 lives. The Army doesn't give out bronze stars for luck. But here in Derek's kitchen, she lets him think she's learning basic knife skills. Lets him believe he's teaching her about food safety and portion control. Lets him feel important while she does work that would make her old drill sergeants proud. Why? Because starting over means proving yourself all over again. Because immigrants don't get the benefit of the doubt. Because women veterans face assumptions that their service was somehow less real, less demanding, less worthy of respect. Maria knows what people see when they look at her. Small woman with an accent, working in a kitchen, taking orders from a man who's never faced anything more dangerous than a backed-up fryer. They see what they expect to see. They don't see the leader who kept supply lines open when the Taliban tried to starve forward operating bases. They don't see the soldier who earned her sergeant stripes by making impossible logistics work in impossible conditions. They don't see the woman who volunteered for a third deployment because her unit needed someone they could trust. She carries those experiences quietly. Not because she's ashamed of them, but because civilian life doesn't have space for war stories. Because people get uncomfortable when you mention that you've been shot at. Because employers worry that veterans might be unstable, unreliable, unable to adjust to normal life. So she hides her strength behind careful deference. Masks her competence with questions she doesn't need to ask. Pretends to learn things she mastered years ago in conditions that would terrify her current co-workers. The discipline Derek mistakes for submission? That's what kept her alive when discipline was the difference between coming home and coming home in a box. The calm he interprets as slowness? That's what happens when you've faced real emergencies and learned that panic kills people. Maria's been patient because patience is a weapon. Because sometimes you have to let people underestimate you until the moment comes when underestimating you becomes impossible. Because revealing your true capabilities too early means people find ways to use those capabilities against you. She's been waiting. Not for recognition, not for respect, but for the moment when her real skills become necessary. when the performance of weakness becomes more dangerous than the risk of showing strength. That moment is coming faster than anyone realizes. The smell of electrical fire is already seeping through the walls. The crisis that will strip away all pretense is already building in the restaurant's aging wiring. Soon, Derek will discover what real leadership looks like. The other cooks will learn what actual competence can accomplish. The customers will owe their lives to the woman everyone assumed was just grateful to have a job. Maria Santos is about to remind everyone that still waters don't just run deep. Sometimes they run strong enough to save lives when everything else fails. The quiet woman chopping onions with surgical precision is about to become the leader she's always been, whether Derek's ready for that revelation or not. Saturday night hits the restaurant like a freight train loaded with expectations. Every table filled. Servers weaving between chairs with practiced desperation. The kitchen running at full capacity, pushed to the absolute edge of what it can handle. Derek's in his element tonight. This is his stage, his moment to shine. He struts through the kitchen with his clipboard raised like a conductor's baton, orchestrating chaos he mistakes for control. Come on, people. We've got a full house out there. His voice carries that particular brand of manufactured urgency that managers use when they want to seem important. Every ticket needs to be perfect. Every dish needs to fly out of here like it's on fire. The irony of that last statement will become apparent soon enough. Orders stream in faster than the kitchen can process them. The ticket machine chatters like machine gun fire, spitting out demands that pile up on the rail. Derek's system, if you can call it that, starts breaking down under pressure. Table 12 is still waiting for their appetizers, Jenny calls from the pass, sweat beading on her forehead. It's been 20 minutes. Then make them faster, Derek snaps back, as if volume could solve logistics problems, as if shouting could create more hands or more time. Maria works her station with the same quiet precision she's maintained for 3 months. Knife moving in steady rhythm. Flames dancing under her pans with controlled intensity. Every dish leaving her station executed flawlessly, seasoned perfectly, plated with care that nobody notices because they're too busy watching Derek perform his authority. She's handling twice as many orders as anyone else. Her section of the line never backs up, never falls behind, never produces a dish that comes back from the dining room. But Derek's too focused on being the star of his own show to notice that his problem employee is actually holding the whole operation together. Maria, your garnish is too heavy on the pasta special, he barks, not bothering to taste the dish he's criticizing. We're not feeding royalty here. Portion control matters. She adjusts the garnish without argument, reduces it by exactly 3 leaves of basil. The dish was perfect before. It's still perfect now. But Derek gets to feel like he's managing, and that's what matters to him. The kitchen temperature climbs as the night progresses. Grills running full blast. Fryers bubbling with oil heated to precise temperatures. Ovens cycling through their programs like mechanical heartbeats. The ventilation system working overtime to clear smoke and steam that builds faster than it can be evacuated. Maria notices things others don't. The way the air feels heavier tonight. The slight electrical smell that's been getting stronger over the past hour. The way the overhead lights flicker occasionally when the walk-in cooler kicks on. She's been trained to notice details that seem insignificant until they become critical. In Afghanistan, the difference between routine and catastrophe often came down to small signs that most people missed. A different sound from a generator, an unusual smell in the air, a flicker in the lights that meant electrical systems were failing. But this is Derek's kitchen, and Derek doesn't want observations from his slow employee. So she keeps working, keeps watching, keeps filing away information that her training tells her might matter. Pick up! Pick up! Derek shouts, though nobody's moving slowly except the system he's supposed to be managing. We're not running a charity here. These people paid good money for fast service. The servers dart in and out of the kitchen like hummingbirds, grabbing plates and disappearing into the dining room chaos. Their faces show the strain of customers getting impatient, managers getting demanding, and tips getting smaller with every delayed order. Maria watches it all with the calm assessment of someone who's seen real pressure. This isn't pressure. This is just disorganization masquerading as urgency. But she knows better than to offer solutions that Derek would never accept from someone he's already decided is incompetent. The smell gets stronger. Electrical? Burning? Not food burning on a grill, but something deeper. Something wrong in the walls where wires carry more current than they were designed to handle. She glances toward the main electrical panel, hidden behind a steel door near the prep area. The building is old. The wiring older. The load tonight is pushing everything to its limits and probably beyond. In her peripheral vision, she catches the first wisp of smoke seeping from an outlet near the dish pit. Not kitchen smoke, not steam. Something else entirely. Her training kicks in automatically. Threat assessment, risk evaluation, contingency planning. All happening in the space between one knife cut and the next, invisible to everyone around her. The restaurant holds 342 people when fully occupied. She's been counting since her first day, the way soldiers count everything that might matter in an emergency. 2 main exits, front door and emergency exit through the kitchen. Fire suppression system that looks like it was installed during the Carter administration. Sprinklers that might work if the electrical system doesn't fail first. Maria's hands never stop moving. Pasta into boiling water. Sauce ladled with precision. Garnish applied with the exact measurements Derek demanded. But her mind is elsewhere, running calculations that have nothing to do with food service and everything to do with keeping people alive. The first smoke detector chirps. Once, tentatively. Like it's not sure whether it should be concerned yet. Derek doesn't hear it over his own voice. He's in the middle of another performance explaining to a server why the kitchen can't possibly move any faster, when the real problem is that he's never learned how to organize workflow under pressure. "We're doing the best we can out here," he declares, as if effort alone could solve problems that require actual competence to fix. "Tell Table 8 their steaks will be right out." The smoke detector chirps again. Longer this time. More insistent. Maria's head snaps up. Her body goes still in a way that would be recognizable to anyone who's served in combat. The absolute stillness that comes when training takes over from conscious thought. She scans the kitchen with new eyes. Not looking for orders to fill or stations to clean, but for threats to assess and people to protect. The transformation is invisible but complete. The quiet woman who's been chopping vegetables for 3 months disappears, replaced by the soldier who kept supply lines running while mortars fell around her. Derek keeps talking, keeps performing, keeps missing every sign that his restaurant is about to become something else entirely. The smoke gets thicker near the electrical panel, still faint enough that most people wouldn't notice it over the normal kitchen haze, but Maria's not most people. She's someone who learned to spot trouble before trouble spotted her. Her eyes track the room automatically. Jenny at the pass, focused on expediting orders. Mike at the grill, sweating over steaks that need to be perfect. 2 prep cooks in the back, heads down, working through their lists. Derek in the center of it all, clipboard clutched like a security blanket, completely oblivious to the crisis building around him. The customers in the dining room laugh and talk and enjoy their Saturday night out. Families celebrating birthdays, couples on dates, groups of friends sharing stories over wine and pasta. None of them aware that the building's electrical system is failing in ways that could turn their pleasant evening into something none of them will ever forget. Maria calculates evacuation routes, counts seconds, measures distances, plans contingencies for contingencies, all while maintaining the perfect performance of the employee Derek thinks he knows. The smoke detector chirps a 3rd time, and now other people start to notice. Jenny glances up from her tickets. Mike pauses in his steak flipping. Even Derek stops talking for a moment, listening to a sound that doesn't belong in his carefully controlled environment. "Probably just steam from the dish pit," he says, dismissing the warning with the confidence of someone who's never faced a real emergency. Those detectors are sensitive, always going off for nothing. But Maria knows the difference between steam and smoke, between false alarms and real threats, between situations you can ignore and situations that demand immediate action. She positions herself with clear sight lines to both exits, starts mentally cataloging everything she'll need if this goes the way her training tells her it might. Fire extinguisher locations, shutoff valves, emergency procedures that probably exist on paper but have never been practiced. The building is about to test everyone inside it, about to reveal who has real training and who just thinks they're in charge, about to strip away all the pretense and performance and show people what actual leadership looks like when lives hang in the balance. Derek continues his Saturday night show, completely unaware that he's about to become a supporting character in someone else's story. The story of the woman he's been underestimating for 3 months. The woman who's about to save every life in the building, including his own. The smoke detector chirps again, and this time it doesn't stop. Everybody stop! The voice cuts through the chaos like a blade through silk. Sharp. Clean. Absolute. Every head in the kitchen turns toward Maria. Not the Maria they think they know. Not the quiet woman who's been absorbing their disrespect for 3 months. Someone else entirely. Derek's mouth hangs open mid-sentence, his clipboard frozen halfway through another dramatic gesture. The transformation in Maria's voice is so complete, so shocking, that for a moment nobody moves. Nobody breathes. This isn't the careful, accented English they're used to hearing. This is command voice. Military precision wrapped in absolute authority. The voice of someone who's given orders that kept people alive when everything was falling apart. "What are you?" Derek starts, but Maria's raised hand cuts him off like a door slamming shut. "Derek, shut off the gas lines. Now, not a request, not a suggestion. A direct order delivered with the kind of authority that bypasses conscious thought and speaks directly to the part of the brain that responds to real leadership." Derek stares at her like she's speaking a foreign language, which in a way she is. The language of actual competence under pressure. The language of someone who's trained for moments exactly like this. "I said now." Maria's voice drops lower, carries more weight. The voice she used to move convoys through Taliban territory. The voice that made seasoned soldiers jump when she spoke. "Gas lines. Shut them down. Move." Something in Derek's brain finally connects. Maybe it's the absolute certainty in her tone. Maybe it's the way she's standing now. Military posture replacing the careful deference he's grown accustomed to. Maybe it's the smoke getting thicker around the electrical panel, making the crisis impossible to ignore. He drops his clipboard and runs toward the gas shutoffs. "Jenny, get the customers out the front entrance. Move fast, stay calm. Don't run, but don't waste time." Maria's orders come rapid fire now, each one delivered with surgical precision. "Tell them it's a precautionary evacuation. Keep them moving. Keep them together." Jenny nods and disappears into the dining room without argument. Something about Maria's tone makes questioning impossible. This isn't the woman who's been asking careful questions about portion sizes and cooking temperatures. This is someone who clearly knows exactly what she's doing. "Mike, check the back exit. Make sure it's clear, make sure it's unlocked. Count how many people you see between here and there. Report back in 30 seconds. Mike drops his tongs and heads for the emergency exit without hesitation. The way Maria's giving orders, the absolute confidence in her voice, creates its own momentum. People follow because following feels like the only rational response. "Sarah, turn off all electrical equipment that isn't essential. Fryers, grills, anything that's drawing heavy current. Leave the lights and ventilation for now." Maria's mental checklist is running automatically, prioritizing threats the way she learned in forward operating bases where getting priorities wrong meant people died. The prep cooks stare at her with wide eyes, but they move. Something fundamental has shifted in the kitchen's power structure. Derek's performed authority has evaporated, replaced by the real thing. Maria's not asking for compliance. She's expecting it, and that expectation carries the weight of someone who's earned the right to be obeyed. "Ma'am, back exit is clear," Mike calls from across the kitchen. "I count maybe 15 people between here and there, mostly servers and busboys." "Ma'am." Not Maria. Not the woman they've been treating like she needed constant supervision. "Ma'am," with the respect reserved for someone clearly in charge. "Good. Get them moving toward the exit. Orderly evacuation, no panic. Tell them to wait outside until we're sure everyone's accounted for." Maria's voice carries across the kitchen like she's addressing troops on a parade ground. Clear, confident, unquestionable. Derek stumbles back from the gas shutoffs, his face flushed and confused. "Maria, what the hell is happening?" You can't just... Gas lines are off? She interrupts, not interested in his protests or his confusion. There's no time for ego management when smoke is getting thicker and the electrical smell is getting stronger. Yes, but... Good. Now help Jenny with the front evacuation. 342 people maximum capacity, probably 280 tonight based on reservations. That's a lot of bodies to move safely. She rattles off numbers like she's briefing a logistics operation, which, in a way, she is. Derek stares at her. How do you know our capacity numbers? Because I pay attention to things that matter. Maria's already moving toward the electrical panel, her mind running through emergency procedures Derek probably doesn't even know exist. You've got customers who paid for dinner, not a disaster story. Keep them calm, keep them moving, get them safe. The authority in her voice is so complete that Derek actually nods and heads toward the dining room. The man who's been treating her like an incompetent immigrant for 3 months is now taking orders from her without question. Crisis has a way of revealing who actually knows what they're doing. Fire department's been called? Maria asks Jenny as she passes through the kitchen. No, I didn't think to. Call them. Now. Tell them we have electrical fire in the kitchen, evacuation in progress, no injuries yet. Maria's radio discipline is showing the way she communicates essential information quickly and clearly. Give them our address, tell them we'll have someone meet them at the front entrance. Jenny nods and pulls out her phone, dialing 911 while heading into the dining room. The calm efficiency Maria's projecting is spreading to everyone around her. No panic, no drama, just competent people doing necessary work. The smoke from the electrical panel is getting thicker now, and Maria can see the first flickers of actual flame behind the steel cover. The building's aging electrical system is failing under the load of a busy Saturday night, just like she suspected it might. She grabs a fire extinguisher from its wall mount, checking the pressure gauge automatically. Full charge. Good. In Afghanistan, she learned to check equipment before you need it, because when you need it, there's no time to discover it doesn't work. Everyone out of the kitchen, she calls, her voice carrying the kind of authority that makes people move without thinking. If you're not essential to evacuation, you're outside. Now. The remaining prep cooks and dishwashers file toward the exits, following her orders with the kind of immediate compliance that real leadership generates. They don't know why they're obeying her, but something about the way she's handling the crisis makes disobedience feel impossible. Derek appears in the kitchen doorway, his face a mixture of confusion and something that might be dawning respect. The dining room's almost clear. Jenny's got the front exit organized. But Maria, I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You need to make sure everyone gets out safely. Maria's checking the fire extinguisher's nozzle, testing the trigger mechanism. How many staff members total tonight? 18, I think. Maybe 19. You think, or you know. The edge in her voice makes Derek straighten up like he's being inspected by a drill sergeant. 19, definitely 19. Good. Count them when you get outside. Make sure nobody's missing. Check the bathrooms, check the office, check anywhere someone might be hiding or trapped. Maria's evacuation protocols are running automatically. The same systematic approach she used to clear buildings in combat zones. Every person accounted for before you consider the job done. Derek nods and disappears back into the dining room. The man who's been micromanaging her knife cuts for 3 months is now following her orders with the urgency of someone who's finally recognized real competence. The flames behind the electrical panel are growing brighter now, and Maria can hear the crackling sound that means the fire is spreading through the building's wiring. Old buildings burn fast once they get started, especially old buildings with electrical systems that were never designed for the loads modern restaurants demand. She positions herself between the fire and the exit routes, fire extinguisher ready, mentally calculating how much time she has before the situation becomes untenable. The sprinkler system should activate soon, but those old sprinklers might not have enough pressure to handle an electrical fire. And if the main electrical panel goes, they could lose lights, ventilation, everything that makes evacuation possible. "Mike, you still here?" she calls toward the back exit. "Yes, ma'am." Last of the staff just went out. Building's clear except for you and Derek. Good. Stay by that exit. Make sure it stays open. If you see me coming fast, get out of the way. Maria's contingency planning is automatic now, the way it was when she planned convoy routes through hostile territory. Always have an escape route. Always have a backup plan. The fire extinguisher feels familiar in her hands. Not because she's fought restaurant fires before, but because she's fought fires in supply depots where ammunition was stored, where fuel trucks were parked, where a single mistake could kill dozens of people and destroy millions of dollars in equipment. This is just another kind of supply depot. Different inventory, same principles. Control the fire, protect the people, minimize the damage. Do it fast, do it right, do it without panic. Derek reappears in the kitchen entrance, his clipboard forgotten somewhere in the dining room. Everyone's out, front and back. Jenny's doing a head count, but I think we got everybody. You think? Or you know? Maria asks again, because in emergencies, thinking isn't good enough. We got everybody, Derek says with more certainty. All customers, all staff. Building's empty except for us. Good. Now get out. Go help with the head count. Make sure the fire department can find us when they arrive. Maria's moving toward the electrical panel now, fire extinguisher raised and ready. This isn't a spectator sport. What about you? For the first time since the crisis started, Maria pauses. Looks at Derek with something that might be surprise. Not because he's asking, but because he's asking like he actually cares about her safety. Like she's a person worth worrying about, not just the employee he's been dismissing for months. I'm going to make sure this fire doesn't spread beyond the kitchen, she says simply. Someone needs to buy time for the fire department to get here. Someone who knows what they're doing. Derek stares at her for a long moment. Really seeing her, maybe for the first time since she walked through his doors 3 months ago. Seeing the military posture he never noticed, the competence he never recognized, the leadership he never acknowledged. Who are you? He asked quietly. Maria Santos looks back at him with eyes that have seen combat, survived mortar attacks, and kept supply lines running when everything else was falling apart. The woman he thought he knew completely disappearing, replaced by someone he's never met, but probably should have respected from day one. I'm the person who's going to make sure nobody dies tonight, she says. Now get out of here and let me do my job. Derek nods and disappears toward the front exit, finally following orders from the woman he should have been listening to all along. The kitchen falls quiet except for the crackling of flames and the sound of Maria's breathing, steady and controlled despite the smoke getting thicker around her. She's alone now with the fire and her training. Alone with the skills Derek never saw, the competence he never recognized, the strength he never acknowledged. Alone with the responsibilities she's carried her entire adult life, keeping people safe when everything goes wrong. The fire extinguisher feels solid in her hands. Ready, just like she is. Time to show everyone what real leadership looks like when it matters most. Derek stumbles toward the front exit, his legs moving automatically while his mind struggles to process what just happened in his kitchen. The woman he's been mocking for 3 months just took command of his entire operation with the kind of authority he's never possessed, never even witnessed up close. His hands shake as he pushes through the dining room doors. Not from fear of the fire, though that's real enough. From the complete reversal of everything he thought he understood about power, about leadership, about the person he's been treating like she needed his constant supervision. Maria, you're slowing everyone down. Maybe fast food is more your speed? The words echo in his head now with a different weight. Not the clever put-down he thought he was delivering, but the ignorant cruelty of someone who had no idea who he was talking to. Someone who mistook quiet competence for incompetence. Someone who confused careful deference with inability. Outside, the crowd of evacuated customers and staff mills around on the sidewalk, looking confused but remarkably calm. No panic, no screaming, no chaos. Jenny moves through the group with clipboard efficiency, checking names off a list she somehow produced in the middle of an emergency. Everyone following her directions without argument. This is Maria's doing. Even though she's still inside fighting the fire, her influence is everywhere. The orderly evacuation, the calm efficiency, the way people are responding to crisis with competence instead of panic. This is what real leadership looks like, and Derek's seeing it for the first time in his life. How many? He asks Jenny, trying to sound like he's still in charge of something. All customers accounted for, she reports. 18 staff members outside, plus you makes 19. Everyone safe? 18 staff members plus him. That means Maria's still inside. Alone. Fighting a fire in a building with electrical problems and aging infrastructure. The woman he's been treating like she couldn't handle basic food prep is risking her life to protect everyone else. Derek looks back at the restaurant, smoke now visible through the windows, and feels something crack inside his chest. Not fear for his business, though, that's real too. Something deeper. The recognition that he's been fundamentally wrong about someone in a way that makes him question everything else he thinks he knows. Sir, are you the manager? A voice behind him. Derek turns to see a fire captain approaching, radio crackling with urgent communications. We need information about the building layout, occupancy, any hazardous materials. Yes, I'm Derek, the manager. The title feels hollow now. Manager of what? He couldn't manage an evacuation, couldn't manage a crisis, couldn't even manage to recognize competence when it was working right next to him every day. How many people were inside when the fire started? Derek's mind goes blank. The question should be simple, but numbers scatter like leaves in his head. We had a full house tonight. Maybe 250 customers, plus staff. Sir, I need exact numbers. The fire captain's voice carries the same kind of authority Maria's did. The authority of someone who knows that precision matters when lives are at stake. Lives depend on accurate information. 342 maximum capacity, a voice says behind Derek. Jenny, reading from her makeshift list. Estimated 280 customers tonight based on reservations. 19 staff members. Everyone accounted for except one. The fire captain nods, making notes. Who's the one unaccounted for? Maria Santos, Jenny says. She's still inside. She's the one who organized the evacuation, shut down the gas lines, called in the emergency. She stayed behind to fight the fire. Derek watches the fire captain's expression change. Professional respect replacing routine questioning. She have training? Fire safety? Emergency response? I don't know. The admission tastes like ashes in Derek's mouth. 3 months of working alongside her, and he doesn't know the most basic facts about her background. She seemed to know what she was doing. Seemed to know? The fire captain's tone sharpens. Sir, someone who seems to know doesn't organize evacuations like this. Doesn't handle crisis management with this kind of precision. What's her background? Derek stares at the restaurant, smoke getting thicker, and realizes he has no idea. He spent 3 months assuming Maria was grateful for any job, thankful for his guidance, learning basic skills from his superior knowledge. He's never asked about her experience, her training, her life before she walked through his doors. I don't know, he admits again, the words scraping his throat raw. I never asked. The fire captain studies Derek's face for a moment, reading something there that makes his expression shift from professional courtesy to barely concealed disgust. You never asked about the background of someone handling food safety in your kitchen? Someone working with dangerous equipment? Someone you're responsible for? Each question hits like a physical blow. Derek realizes he's never thought of himself as responsible for Maria. He's thought of her as someone he was doing a favor by employing. Someone who should be grateful for his tolerance of her limitations. Someone whose actual capabilities were irrelevant because he'd already decided what those capabilities were. She's been working here 3 months, Derek says weakly, as if duration could somehow excuse his ignorance. 3 months, and you don't know if she has emergency response training. The fire captain shakes his head. Sir, that woman just saved every life in your building, including yours. Maybe you should have spent less time managing her and more time learning from her. The words land like a punch to the gut. Derek watches firefighters disappear into his restaurant, following protocols that Maria apparently understood better than he did. equipment deployment that she probably could have directed, emergency procedures that she clearly knew by heart. There she is. Jenny points toward the building's side exit. Maria emerges through a cloud of smoke, fire extinguisher in one hand. Her chef's coat singed, but her posture still military straight. She walks directly to the fire captain, ignoring Derek completely, and begins delivering what sounds like a tactical briefing. Electrical fire originated near the main panel, spread through wall wiring to the prep area. I contained it with CO2 extinguisher, but there's still active burning in the walls. Buildings structurally sound, ventilation system functioning. No casualties, no injuries, all personnel accounted for. The fire captain nods, making rapid notes. Training background? Army logistics, 3 deployments. Fire suppression, emergency response, crisis management. Maria's voice is crisp, professional. The voice of someone reporting to a superior officer, not the careful, accented English Derek's grown accustomed to hearing. Building cleared using standard evacuation protocols. Gas lines secured, electrical loads reduced to prevent secondary ignition. Outstanding work, Sergeant. The fire captain's tone carries immediate respect. We'll take it from here. Sergeant. The title hits Derek like a revelation. Not just army training, leadership training, command experience. The woman he's been treating like she needed supervision has been a non-commissioned officer. Someone who's led soldiers in combat. Someone who's made life and death decisions under conditions that make restaurant service look like a children's game. Derek watches Maria coordinate with the fire department, pointing out building features, explaining her containment efforts, providing information with the precision of someone who's briefed military operations. Every gesture, every word, every decision reveals layers of competence he never bothered to discover. The customers begin to disperse as firefighters declare the scene secure. Some stop to thank Maria personally, recognizing that her quick action saved their evening from becoming a tragedy. She accepts their gratitude with the same quiet dignity she's shown while absorbing Derek's daily criticism. Maria. Derek approaches her as the crowd thins, his voice uncertain. The woman standing before him is simultaneously the employee he's known for 3 months and a complete stranger. I owe you. She looks at him with eyes that have seen combat, survived mortar attacks, and kept supply lines running when everything else fell apart. Eyes that are measuring him now with the same tactical assessment she probably used to evaluate threats in Afghanistan. You owe me nothing, she says quietly. This is what you do when people's lives matter more than your ego. The words are delivered without anger, without accusation, but they cut deeper than any shouting match could. Derek realizes he's spent 3 months prioritizing his own authority over everyone's safety, his own image over actual competence, his own comfort over the basic human dignity of someone who's served her country with honor. I didn't know about your military service, he says, the excuse sounding pathetic even to his own ears. You never asked? Maria's voice remains calm, matter of fact. You decided what you thought I was, and asking questions might have interfered with that decision. Derek feels heat rise in his face, but not from the fire still smoldering in his restaurant. From shame. From the recognition that she's absolutely right. He made assumptions based on accent, on appearance, on his own prejudices about who deserves respect and who doesn't. I was wrong, he says, the words feeling foreign in his mouth. About everything. About you. Maria studies his face for a long moment. Not with hostility, but with the careful evaluation of someone who's learned to read people accurately because misreading them could be fatal. Yes, she says simply. You were. The fire captain approaches them, radio still crackling with updates from inside the building. Sergeant Santos, we've got the fire contained. Minimal structural damage, mostly electrical systems that needed updating anyway. Your quick action prevented what could have been a total loss. Derek listens to the praise being directed at the woman he's been criticizing daily. The woman whose competence he's been questioning. The woman who just saved his business, his customers, and quite possibly his life. Thank you, Derek says to Maria, the words feeling inadequate but necessary. For everything. For for showing me what real leadership looks like." Maria nods once, acknowledging his thanks without accepting his absolution. Because gratitude doesn't erase 3 months of disrespect. Recognition doesn't undo the daily erosion of dignity. Understanding doesn't automatically repair the damage done by willful ignorance. But it's a start. The beginning of Derek's real education about the people he's responsible for, the assumptions he's made, and the leader he could become if he's willing to learn from someone who actually knows what leadership means. The woman he thought he was managing has just taught him more about management than he's learned in his entire career. Whether he's capable of absorbing those lessons remains to be seen. Sergeant First Class Maria Santos, 82nd Airborne Division. The words hang in the night air like smoke from the dying fire. Derek stares at Maria as if she's speaking a foreign language, which in a way she is. The language of military service, of combat experience, of leadership earned through trial by fire in places where mistakes cost lives. The fire captain nods with immediate recognition. "Airborne. What was your MOS, Sergeant?" 92A, Automated Logistical Specialist, Forward Operating Base Supply Operations, Convoy Security, Emergency Logistics under Combat Conditions. Maria's response is crisp, automatic. The kind of answer that comes from years of military briefings where precision matters and hesitation can be fatal. Derek's mind struggles to process the terminology. MOS, Forward Operating Base. Convoy Security. These aren't phrases from the restaurant industry. These are military terms that speak to experiences he can't begin to imagine. Combat deployments. Life and death responsibilities. Leadership under conditions that make a busy Saturday night look like a children's game. 3 deployments, Maria continues, her voice carrying the weight of someone who's seen things civilians never will. Afghanistan, 2009 to 2011. Helmand Province, Kandahar, Forward Operating Base Shank. Supply line management, convoy operations, emergency response coordination. The fire captain's expression shifts to something approaching reverence. FOB Shank. That was a hot zone. You were running supplies through Taliban territory. Every day for 18 months. Maria's tone remains matter-of-fact, but Derek catches something in her eyes. The distant look of someone remembering roads where death waited around every corner. Fuel, ammunition, food, medical supplies. Whatever the forward units needed to stay alive and operational. Derek feels his worldview cracking like glass under pressure. The woman he's been treating like she needed constant supervision was managing supply operations for thousands of soldiers in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. While he was learning to manage restaurant inventory and climate-controlled comfort, she was calculating fuel loads and ammunition requirements while mortars fell around her. "How many vehicles in your typical convoy?" the fire captain asks, and Derek realizes this isn't casual conversation. This is one professional recognizing another, trading experiences that civilians like him will never fully understand. 12 to 15 trucks depending on the mission. MRAPS for security, heavy transport for bulk supplies, fuel tankers when we were running diesel to the remote outposts. Maria's memory is precise, detailed. The kind of recall that comes from operations where forgetting details meant people died. Average convoy speed, 15 miles per hour through hostile territory. Every mile a potential ambush site. Derek tries to imagine Maria behind the wheel of a military truck, leading convoys through Taliban territory, and fails completely. The mental image doesn't compute with the quiet woman who's been chopping vegetables in his kitchen. But the evidence is standing right in front of him, speaking with the authority of someone who's done things he'll never have the courage to attempt. IED encounters? The fire captain asks. 17 confirmed, probably more that didn't detonate. Maria's voice doesn't change, but Derek sees her hands tighten slightly, the only outward sign of memories that probably wake her up at night. Lost 2 trucks to roadside bombs. No fatalities in my convoys, but plenty of close calls. No fatalities in her convoys. Derek lets that sink in. She was responsible for getting people home alive from a war zone, and she succeeded. Every time. The woman he's been lecturing about food safety kept soldiers alive in conditions where a single mistake meant death. Bronze Star? the fire captain asks, reading something in Maria's posture that Derek's too ignorant to recognize. Bronze Star with V device. Meritorious service under combat conditions. Maria's response is quiet, almost reluctant, like she's uncomfortable with praise for doing what she considered her job. Convoy hit by IED outside Kandahar. Maintained operational control. Coordinated medical evacuation. Completed mission objectives despite enemy contact. Derek's legs feel weak. Bronze Star with V device. He doesn't know what that means exactly, but he knows enough to understand its significance. A decoration for valor. For heroism under fire. The woman he's been mocking for 3 months is a decorated combat veteran who earned her medals by keeping people alive when everything went to hell. What happened? Derek asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Maria looks at him for a long moment, as if deciding whether he's worthy of the story. Whether someone who's spent 3 months dismissing her competence deserves to understand the experiences that forged her into the leader she's always been. Lead truck hit an IED. Driver and passenger both wounded, one critical. Engine block cracked. Vehicle disabled in the middle of a known ambush zone. Her words are measured, clinical. The tone of someone who's briefed this operation so many times that emotion has been stripped away, leaving only facts. Enemy fire from 3 positions, small arms and RPGs, standard Taliban tactics. Derek tries to picture it. Explosions, gunfire, wounded soldiers. Maria in the middle of it all, making decisions that would determine who lived and who died. The mental image feels surreal, like something from a movie, rather than the real experience of someone he's been treating like she couldn't handle basic food preparation. I had maybe 30 seconds to assess the situation and make a decision, Maria continues. Leave the disabled truck and extract the wounded, or stay and fight while calling for support. Either choice meant risking lives. What did you do? The fire captain asks, though his tone suggests he already knows the answer will involve courage beyond what most people can imagine. Both. Maria's response is simple, but Derek hears the weight behind it. Coordinated suppressing fire to keep the Taliban pinned down. Called in air support while organizing medical evacuation for the wounded. Maintained convoy security while establishing a defensive perimeter. She makes it sound routine, like she's describing how to prep vegetables for service. But Derek's beginning to understand that this is how real professionals talk about their work. Without drama, without self-aggrandizement, just competent people describing competent actions taken under impossible circumstances. Air support response time? The fire captain asks. 18 minutes. Felt like 18 hours. For the first time, Maria's professional composure cracks slightly. A hint of what those 18 minutes must have felt like, trapped in hostile territory with wounded soldiers and an enemy that wanted them all dead. Apache gunships cleared the ambush positions. Medevac extracted the wounded. We completed the supply run to the forward outpost. Completed the mission. Even after being attacked, even with wounded soldiers, even facing enemy fire, she completed the mission. Because that's what leaders do. They find a way to accomplish the objective while keeping their people alive. Derek feels sick. Not from the smoke still lingering in the air, but from the recognition of how completely wrong he's been. The woman he's been lecturing about portion control was making life and death decisions while under enemy fire. The employee he thought needed constant supervision was commanding soldiers in combat operations. How many soldiers in your typical supply operation? Derek asks, trying to understand the scope of responsibility she carried. Varied by mission. Small runs, maybe 40 personnel. Major resupply operations, up to 300 soldiers depending on how many forward outposts we were servicing. Maria's numbers are precise, automatic. The kind of recall that comes from operations where knowing exactly how many people you're responsible for isn't optional. Food service for 3,000 personnel daily at the main base. Medical supplies, ammunition, fuel, equipment maintenance materials. Everything required to keep combat operations running. 3,000 personnel. Derek manages maybe 20 people on his busiest nights, and half the time he feels overwhelmed by the complexity. Maria was feeding 3,000 soldiers daily while managing supply lines through hostile territory. The scale of her responsibilities makes his job look like a hobby. "What brought you here?" the fire captain asks gently. "From military logistics to restaurant work?" Maria's expression shifts, and Derek sees something he's never noticed before. Not the careful deference he's grown accustomed to, but the quiet dignity of someone who's made difficult choices and accepts the consequences without complaint. "Transition to civilian life isn't always smooth," she says simply. "Military experience doesn't always translate directly to civilian employment. Employers see combat veteran, and sometimes they worry about PTSD, about reliability, about whether someone who's been in war zones can handle normal workplace stress." Derek feels heat rise in his face. He's been one of those employers, making assumptions about what Maria could handle based on prejudices he didn't even realize he carried. Treating her like she needed protection from the complexity of restaurant service when she'd managed operations that made his job look trivial. "So you start over," Maria continues. "Take whatever work you can find, prove yourself again from the bottom up. Show people that military discipline translates to civilian competence, even if they can't see the connection immediately." "But why didn't you tell us about your background?" Jenny asks. She's been listening to the conversation with growing amazement, probably realizing that she's been working alongside someone whose experiences dwarf anything in her own life. Would it have mattered? Maria's question is quiet, but it cuts through the night air like a blade. Would Derek have treated me differently if he'd known I was a decorated combat veteran? Or would he have found other reasons to dismiss my competence? The question hangs unanswered because everyone knows the truth. Derek would have found other reasons. The accent, the careful English, the immigrant status, the gender. People who are determined to see incompetence will find ways to justify their prejudices regardless of evidence to the contrary. "I've learned that respect has to be earned in every new environment," Maria says. "Military rank doesn't transfer to civilian workplaces. Combat experience doesn't automatically generate trust from people who've never faced anything more dangerous than a backed-up fryer. So you start over. You prove yourself again. You let your work speak for itself." Derek realizes that's exactly what she's been doing. Letting her work speak for itself. Perfect knife technique. Flawless execution under pressure. Never a mistake, never a complaint, never a dish that came back from the dining room. Her competence has been on display every single day, and he's been too blind to see it. "The Bronze Star citation," the fire captain says. "Do you have the actual text?" Maria nods. Sergeant First Class Maria Santos distinguished herself by exceptionally valorous conduct in direct contact with an armed hostile force. When her convoy came under enemy fire, Sergeant Santos displayed exceptional leadership and tactical proficiency, coordinating defensive operations while ensuring the evacuation of wounded personnel. Her decisive actions under extreme combat conditions prevented casualties and ensured mission completion. Sergeant Santos's courage, competence, and unwavering commitment to her soldiers exemplify the finest traditions of military service. The words wash over Derek like a cold wave. Exceptional leadership, tactical proficiency, decisive actions under extreme combat conditions. The woman he's been treating like she needed his guidance has official recognition for leadership that he'll never possess, competence that he'll never achieve, courage that he'll never be called upon to demonstrate. 3 deployments, Derek says quietly, trying to process the magnitude of service that represents. That's voluntary, right? After the first deployment? Second and third tours were voluntary, yes. Maria's response is matter-of-fact, but Derek hears the weight behind it. "My unit needed experienced logistics personnel. Soldiers I'd served with were going back. You don't abandon your people when they need you. You don't abandon your people when they need you." The phrase echoes in Derek's mind, highlighting every moment over the past 3 months when he's failed to support the people working under him. When he's prioritized his own ego over their success, his own authority over their dignity. "Why logistics?" Jenny asks. "Why not infantry or something more? I don't know, more obviously military?" Maria almost smiles at the question. Logistics is the backbone of military operations. Infantry can't fight without ammunition. Armor can't move without fuel. Medics can't save lives without supplies. Every combat mission depends on someone making sure the right materials reach the right place at the right time. She pauses, looking at Derek with something that might be pity. It's like restaurant service, actually. Front of house gets the glory, but nothing works without competent support operations. Without someone who understands that every detail matters, that timing is everything, that failure to execute means everyone suffers. The analogy hits Derek like a physical blow. She's been trying to show him competent support operations for 3 months, and he's been too focused on performing his own authority to recognize what real competence looks like. The fire captain closes his notebook, the official investigation apparently complete. Sergeant Santos, it's been an honor. Your actions tonight prevented what could have been a major tragedy. The city owes you a debt of gratitude. Just doing what needed to be done, Maria responds, with the quiet humility of someone who's never needed external validation to know her own worth. As the fire department begins packing up their equipment, Derek stands in the street outside his restaurant, watching the woman he thought he knew disappear into someone he's never met. The quiet immigrant worker replaced by a decorated combat veteran. The employee he thought needed his supervision revealed as a leader who's commanded soldiers in life-and-death situations. Everything he thought he understood about authority, about competence, about the people working under him, has been stripped away in the space of a single evening. The fire didn't just damage his restaurant's electrical system. It burned away his illusions about himself and the person he's been failing to see for 3 months. Maria Santos stands in the street, still wearing her singed chef's coat, still carrying herself with the military bearing he never bothered to notice. The Bronze Star recipient who's been chopping his vegetables. The convoy commander who's been taking his orders. The leader who's been hiding in plain sight while he performed his authority for an audience that never needed his performance. The truth revealed isn't just about Maria's military service. It's about Derek's fundamental failure to see the people around him as anything more than extensions of his own ego. About the cost of assumptions, the danger of prejudice, and the way real strength often disguises itself as quiet competence. The woman he's been underestimating just saved every life in his building, including his own. Maybe it's time he started listening to what she's been trying to teach him all along. The fire department's praise echoes in the street as equipment gets loaded back onto trucks. Red and blue lights still flash against the restaurant's smoke-stained windows. But the immediate crisis has passed. What remains is harder to quantify than structural damage or electrical repairs. Derek watches firefighters coil hoses and pack gear with the efficient movements of people who've done this countless times before. Professional competence in action. The same kind of competence Maria displayed tonight, except Derek's been watching her version of it for 3 months, without recognizing what he was seeing. Captain Rodriguez approaches Maria one final time, his radio crackling with calls to other emergencies across the city. Sergeant, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen a lot of evacuations and most of them are chaos. What you accomplished tonight was textbook perfect. Thank you, Captain. Maria's response carries the quiet dignity Derek's grown accustomed to, but now he hears it differently. Not the careful deference of someone grateful for employment, but the measured professionalism of someone who's earned respect in far more demanding circumstances. You ever consider fire department work? We're always looking for people with your kind of training. The captain's offer is genuine, delivered with the respect of one professional recognizing another. Emergency response, logistics coordination, leadership under pressure, you've got skills we need. Derek feels something twist in his stomach. Not jealousy exactly, but recognition that other people can see Maria's value immediately while he spent 3 months missing it completely. The fire captain met her an hour ago and already understands what Derek failed to grasp in 90 days of working alongside her. I appreciate the offer, Maria says. Right now, I'm focused on civilian transition, learning how restaurant operations work, building experience in food service management. Food service management. Derek catches the phrase and realizes she's been studying his industry, not just working in it. Learning systems, understanding workflows, preparing for advancement while he's been treating her like she needed remedial training in basic kitchen skills. The captain nods and hands her a business card. If you change your mind, give me a call. People with your background don't come along often. As the fire trucks pull away, the street feels suddenly quiet. The crowd of evacuated customers has mostly dispersed, many of them stopping to thank Maria personally before leaving. Recognition from strangers who witnessed her leadership tonight, gratitude from people whose lives she protected. Derek notices how she accepts their thanks, not with false modesty or uncomfortable deflection, but with the quiet acknowledgement of someone who's done her job well. The same way she probably accepted commendations from superior officers after successful missions in Afghanistan. Maria. Jenny approaches tentatively, her clipboard forgotten in the chaos of the evening. I owe you an apology. We all do. The way we've been treating you, the assumptions we've made. You didn't know, Maria responds simply. I didn't share information about my background because civilian workplaces don't always know how to process military experience. It's easier to let people form their own opinions based on work performance. But that's exactly the problem, Derek realizes. They haven't been judging her work performance. They've been judging her accent, her careful questions, her immigrant status. They've been seeing what they expected to see instead of what was actually there. Your work performance has been perfect, Jenny continues. Every dish, every shift, every task. We didn't understand what perfect looked like when it wasn't announcing itself. Derek watches this exchange with growing discomfort. Jenny's recognizing truths that he should have seen first. As the manager, as the person responsible for evaluating employee performance, he should have been the one noticing Maria's consistent excellence. Instead, he's been the primary obstacle to recognizing it. Mike emerges from the restaurant's back exit, having helped firefighters with their final inspection of the building. His face shows the same mixture of amazement and shame that Derek's been feeling since Maria took command of the crisis. The fire chief says the building's structurally sound, Mike reports. Electrical damage mostly confined to the main panel and some wall wiring. Could have been much worse if someone hadn't acted fast. He looks directly at Maria when he says it. Not Derek, not the manager who's supposed to be responsible for emergency procedures. Maria, who actually knew what to do when knowing mattered most. How did you know? Mike asks. About the evacuation procedures, the gas shutoffs, all of it? That wasn't luck. That was training. Emergency response was part of my military specialty, Maria explains. Forward operating bases face constant threats, fire, explosions, enemy attacks. You learn to assess situations quickly and act decisively because hesitation gets people killed. Derek tries to imagine the kind of training that produces such automatic competence under pressure. Military exercises where mistakes have real consequences. Combat deployments where leadership isn't theoretical but literally life and death. Experiences that make restaurant emergencies look manageable by comparison. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, Derek addresses Maria directly, his voice uncertain. About respect having to be earned in every new environment. But that's not true, is it? Respect should be given until someone proves they don't deserve it. Maria studies his face for a long moment. Not with hostility, but with the careful assessment of someone who's learned to read people accurately because misreading them could be fatal. In theory, yes, she says quietly. In practice, respect often depends on factors that have nothing to do with competence. Accent, appearance, assumptions about background and capability. People see what they expect to see. And I expected to see someone who needed my guidance, Derek admits, the words scraping his throat raw. Someone grateful for whatever job she could get. Someone who should be thankful for my tolerance of her limitations. The honesty hangs in the night air like smoke from the dying fire. Derek's confession of prejudices he didn't even realize he carried. Assumptions that shaped every interaction for 3 months. Yes, Maria says simply. You did. No anger in her voice, no accusation, just acknowledgement of facts that both of them understand perfectly. Derek expected incompetence and interpreted everything through that lens. Maria's precision became slowness. Her thoroughness became uncertainty. Her professionalism became submissiveness. The other staff followed your lead, Jenny adds quietly. If the manager treated you like you were learning basic skills, then that's what we assumed was happening. We didn't question it. Derek realizes the full scope of his failure. Not just personal prejudice, but Leadership that created a culture where Maria's competence was systematically dismissed, where her military training was invisible, her combat experience irrelevant, her proven leadership capabilities ignored. I want to make this right, Derek says, though he's not sure what that means exactly. How do you repair 3 months of disrespect? How do you acknowledge competence you should have recognized from day one? What does that look like to you? Maria asks, and Derek hears something in her tone. Not hostility, but genuine curiosity about whether he's capable of real change or just temporary guilt. Promotion, Derek says immediately. Assistant manager position. Recognition of your actual capabilities, not the limitations I imagined you had. Maria nods slowly, considering the offer. And what makes you think I want to be assistant manager in a workplace where my competence was invisible for 3 months? The question stops Derek cold. He's been thinking about what he can offer to make amends, not about whether Maria would want what he's offering. Whether someone with her background and capabilities would choose to stay in an environment where she's been systematically undervalued. I don't know, he admits. I hope you'll give me a chance to show that tonight changed how I see things. How I see you. Tonight didn't change anything, Maria responds. Tonight revealed what was already there. The question is whether you're capable of seeing it consistently, not just during emergencies when it's impossible to ignore. Derek feels the weight of that challenge. It's easy to recognize competence when it's saving your life. Much harder to acknowledge it during routine operations when ego and prejudice have room to operate. The fire department captain offered you a job, Derek says. Emergency response, logistics coordination, probably better pay, definitely more respect for your background. He did, Maria confirms. Are you going to take it? Maria looks at the restaurant, smoke stains visible on the windows, electrical damage that will take weeks to repair. Then she looks at Derek, at Jenny, at Mike, the people who've worked alongside her for 3 months without seeing her. I came here to learn civilian operations, she says finally, to understand how business works outside military structure. That learning process isn't complete. Derek hears the conditional nature of her response. She's not staying out of loyalty to him or gratitude for employment. She's staying because the job still serves her purposes. Whether it continues to do so depends on whether the workplace culture changes along with his recognition of her capabilities. What would need to change, Derek asks, for this to be a place where your experience is valued, not hidden? Real responsibility, Maria says, without hesitation. Not just title changes, but actual authority to implement improvements. Operations planning, staff training, emergency procedures. Work that uses my background instead of ignoring it. Derek nods, understanding that she's describing a fundamental shift in power dynamics. Not just promoting her within the existing system, but changing the system to accommodate competence that exceeds his own in critical areas. Staff education, Jenny adds, about military service, about what veterans bring to civilian workplaces. So this doesn't happen again with the next person whose background we don't understand. Respect protocols, Mike suggests. Ways to recognize competence that doesn't announce itself. Systems for identifying and developing talent instead of making assumptions based on surface characteristics. Derek listens to his staff outline changes that should have been obvious from the beginning. Basic human dignity in the workplace. Recognition of diverse backgrounds and experiences. Leadership that develops people instead of diminishing them. I can do that, Derek says, though he's not entirely sure how. I can learn to be the kind of manager who sees people clearly instead of seeing what I expect to see. Can you? Maria's question is gentle but pointed. Or will you go back to old patterns once the shock of tonight wears off? Once the memory of needing my help fades and you start feeling comfortable in your authority again? The question cuts to the heart of Derek's uncertainty about himself. Change is easy to promise in moments of crisis and revelation. Much harder to sustain when daily routines reassert themselves and ego finds new ways to justify old behaviors. I don't know, Derek admits, but I want to try. I want to learn from someone who actually knows what leadership looks like. Maria studies his face for a long moment, reading something there that makes her expression soften slightly. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition that genuine change might be possible if he's willing to do the work. Then we start tomorrow, she says. New protocols, new expectations, new ways of seeing what's actually there instead of what we assume should be there. Derek nods, understanding that he's been given a second chance he doesn't deserve but desperately needs. The opportunity to learn from someone whose competence he should have recognized from day one, whose leadership he should have acknowledged instead of undermining, whose strength he should have supported instead of dismissing. The restaurant stands behind them, damaged but repairable. Like the workplace culture that allowed competence to hide in plain sight for 3 months. Like Derek's understanding of the people he's responsible for leading. Tomorrow, they'll start the real work. Not just repairing electrical systems, but rebuilding respect. Not just reopening for business, but creating a place where Maria Santos's military experience is valued instead of invisible. Where leadership is recognized regardless of accent or assumption. Tonight changed everything by revealing what was always there. Whether that revelation leads to lasting transformation depends on Derek's willingness to keep learning from the woman he should have been listening to all along. The fire is out. The real work is just beginning. You want to understand what real leadership looks like? Watch what happened in that restaurant kitchen when crisis stripped away all the performance and pretense. When the smoke cleared and the truth emerged about who actually knew how to keep people alive. Derek thought leadership meant carrying a clipboard and finding fault with other people's work. He confused authority with competence, management with command. He believed that being loud made him strong, that criticism demonstrated expertise, that his position automatically generated respect. Maria showed him something different. Leadership that doesn't announce itself until it's needed. Authority earned through competence under pressure. Command voice that cuts through chaos because it carries the weight of someone who's made life and death decisions when everything was falling apart. The difference isn't subtle. It's the gap between performing leadership and actually leading. Between demanding respect and commanding it. Between managing people and inspiring them to follow you into dangerous situations because they trust your judgment completely. Derek's version of leadership crumbled the moment real crisis hit. All his clipboard authority, all his daily criticism, all his performed competence disappeared when the fire alarm started shrieking and people needed someone who actually knew what to do. He froze. He panicked. He became a follower in his own kitchen. Maria's leadership emerged automatically. Not because she wanted to take charge, but because people were in danger and she had the training to protect them. No hesitation, no performance, no concern for ego or hierarchy. Just competent action taken by someone who understood that leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking responsibility when responsibility matters most. Everybody stop. 4 words that changed everything. Not because Maria raised her voice, but because her voice carried absolute certainty. The kind of authority that comes from experience under fire. From making decisions when hesitation kills people. From knowing that real leaders don't ask for permission to lead when lives hang in the balance. Derek had been giving orders for 3 months, and people followed them reluctantly. Maria gave orders for 3 minutes, and people obeyed immediately. The difference wasn't position, or title, or clipboard. It was competence. It was training. It was the unmistakable presence of someone who'd earned the right to be followed. Watch how she took control of the evacuation. No drama, no speeches about teamwork or rising to the occasion. Just systematic delegation of specific tasks to specific people with clear expectations and precise timelines. Military efficiency applied to civilian crisis. Leadership that focused on results instead of recognition. Derek, shut off the gas lines. Now. Not a request. Not a suggestion with room for negotiation. A direct order from someone who understood that emergencies don't allow time for ego management or democratic discussion. When the building is burning, you follow the person who knows how to keep everyone alive. Jenny, get the customers out the front entrance. Move fast. Stay calm. Clear instructions delivered with the confidence of someone who's organized evacuations under far more dangerous conditions. No micromanagement, no second guessing, just trust in people's ability to execute when given competent direction. Mike, check the back exit. Make sure it's clear. Make sure it's unlocked. Every order designed to accomplish essential objectives while maintaining accountability. The systematic approach of someone who's learned that successful operations depend on everyone understanding their role and executing it perfectly. This is what leadership training looks like when it's been tested in combat, when the stakes were real and the consequences of failure were measured in body counts, when following orders meant the difference between soldiers coming home alive or coming home in boxes. Derek watched his authority evaporate and Maria's emerge, and he learned something fundamental about the difference between management and leadership. Management is about systems and processes and maintaining control over predictable situations. Leadership is about people and decisions and taking responsibility when everything goes wrong. You can teach management techniques, you can learn organizational charts and delegation strategies and performance evaluation methods. But you can't teach the kind of leadership Maria displayed that night. It has to be forged through experience, tested under pressure, proven when people's lives depend on your judgment. The Bronze Star citation tells the story. Exceptional leadership and tactical proficiency under direct contact with an armed hostile force. Not leadership in comfortable conference rooms or during routine operations. Leadership when bullets were flying and soldiers were bleeding and every decision carried life or death consequences. That's the kind of training that produces automatic competence under pressure. When Maria heard the smoke detector, her military experience kicked in immediately. Threat assessment, evacuation protocols, resource management, personnel accountability. All happening simultaneously while Derek was still trying to figure out what the sound meant. How many people were inside when the fire started? The fire captain's question revealed another leadership lesson. Real leaders know their numbers. They count everything that matters because, in emergencies, guessing gets people killed. Maria knew the restaurant's capacity, the night's occupancy, the exact staff count. Derek had to ask someone else for information he should have known automatically. Leadership means being responsible for everyone under your command. Not just during normal operations, but especially during crises when people need someone who's prepared for situations they've never faced. Maria had been counting personnel and mapping exits since her first day because that's what leaders do. They prepare for problems they hope will never happen. Watch how she communicated with the fire department. Military radio discipline applied to civilian emergency response. Clear, concise information delivered in logical sequence. Situation report, personnel accountability, hazard assessment, containment efforts. Professional communication between equals, not the fumbling uncertainty of someone overwhelmed by circumstances. Electrical fire originated near the main panel, spread through wall wiring to the prep area. I contained it with CO2 extinguisher, but there's still active burning in the walls. Building structurally sound, ventilation system functioning. No casualties, no injuries, all personnel accounted for. That's how competent leaders brief superior officers. Facts, not opinions. Status, not speculation. Information that allows decision-makers to understand the situation quickly and allocate resources effectively. The kind of communication that saves time when time saves lives. Derek couldn't have delivered that briefing if he'd had an hour to prepare. Not because he lacked intelligence, but because he lacked training. He'd never learned to think systematically under pressure. Never developed the discipline to separate essential information from irrelevant details. Never practiced the kind of communication that works when seconds matter. The fire captain recognized Maria's competence immediately. Outstanding work, Sergeant. Professional respect from one expert to another. Recognition that transcended civilian-military boundaries because competence speaks a universal language that other competent people understand instinctively. Derek had worked alongside Maria for 3 months without recognizing her capabilities. The fire captain identified them in 3 minutes. The difference wasn't observation skills or professional insight. It was the ability to see competence that doesn't announce itself, to recognize leadership that operates through effectiveness rather than performance. You never asked. Maria's response to Derek's confusion about her military background reveals another leadership lesson. Real leaders don't assume they know everything about the people they're responsible for. They ask questions. They listen to answers. They understand that everyone brings experiences and capabilities that might not be immediately obvious. Derek made assumptions based on accent and appearance and immigrant status. He decided what Maria was capable of without investigating what she'd actually accomplished. He confused unfamiliar with incompetent, different with deficient. Classic leadership failure. Judging people by surface characteristics instead of actual performance. Military leadership training teaches you to evaluate people based on results under pressure. Combat doesn't care about your accent or your background, or whether you fit conventional expectations. It only cares about whether you can accomplish the mission and bring your people home alive. That's the kind of evaluation that produces accurate assessment of human capability. Respect has to be earned in every new environment. Maria's understanding of civilian workplace dynamics shows another dimension of leadership wisdom. She could have demanded recognition based on her military record, could have insisted that her Bronze Star commanded automatic respect. Instead, she let her work speak for itself while preparing for the moment when her real capabilities would become undeniable. That's strategic patience. Leadership that thinks beyond immediate gratification to long-term objectives. Maria wasn't trying to prove herself to Derek on his terms. She was building competence that would be impossible to ignore when circumstances demanded excellence. When the performance had to stop and real leadership had to emerge. The evacuation succeeded because Maria understood something Derek didn't. Leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room or the person with the most impressive title. It's about being the person others trust to make good decisions when good decisions matter most. Trust earned through demonstrated competence, not demanded through positional authority. Every customer and staff member evacuated safely. No injuries, no casualties, minimal property damage. Mission accomplished by someone who understood that successful leadership is measured by results, not recognition. By lives saved, not credit claimed. By problem solved, not performance applauded. Derek's education in real leadership began that night, but it won't end there. Because the most important lesson Maria taught him isn't about emergency response or crisis management. It's about seeing people clearly instead of seeing what you expect to see. About recognizing competence that doesn't announce itself. About understanding that real strength often disguises itself as quiet professionalism. The woman who saved his restaurant, his customers, and his staff had been there all along. The leader he needed had been working right next to him for 3 months. The competence he should have been learning from had been on display every single day. He just hadn't been paying attention to the right things. Real leadership means developing the ability to see what's actually there instead of what you assume should be there. To recognize that the person you're underestimating might be the one who saves your life when everything falls apart. To understand that authority without competence is just performance, but competence without recognition is tragedy. Maria Santos taught Derek more about leadership in one night than he'd learned in his entire career. Whether he's capable of applying those lessons consistently remains to be seen. Whether he can transform from someone who performs authority to someone who earns it through competence under pressure. The fire revealed who the real leader was. The question now is whether Derek can learn to become the kind of leader Maria already is. Someone people follow not because they have to, but because they trust him to keep them safe when everything goes wrong. That's the difference between management and leadership, between position and competence, between performing authority and actually deserving it. The lesson is simple. The application is everything. Maria's back at work 3 weeks later, same quiet precision, same steady hands moving through prep work with surgical accuracy. But everything has changed in ways that matter more than the new electrical panels or the updated fire suppression system. The respect she earned through crisis has settled into something deeper. Not the temporary gratitude that fades when memory dims, but the permanent recognition that comes when people finally see what was always there. Derek doesn't carry his clipboard like a weapon anymore. He carries it like a tool, asking questions instead of hunting for problems. Maria, what do you think about the new evacuation protocol? His voice holds genuine curiosity now, not the performed authority of someone who already knows all the answers. Does it match what you'd recommend based on your training? She reviews the emergency procedures he's drafted, noting improvements that show he's been listening. Exit routes clearly marked. Staff responsibilities specifically assigned. Communication protocols that actually work under pressure. Not perfect, but competent. The work of someone who's learned to value expertise over ego. Good foundation, she says, making notes in the margins. I'd suggest adding backup procedures for electrical failures and cross-training so everyone knows multiple roles if people get separated during evacuation. Derek nods, taking notes like a student learning from a teacher. The man who spent 3 months lecturing her about portion control now seeks her input on operational planning. The transformation isn't complete, but it's real. Crisis has a way of burning away pretense, leaving only what actually matters. Jenny approaches with the kind of respect that should have been there from day one. Maria, I've been thinking about what you said about logistics being the backbone of operations. Could you help me redesign the prep schedule? I think we're wasting motion and time. The request comes naturally now, without the condescension that used to poison every interaction. Jenny's learned to see competence that doesn't announce itself, to recognize that the quietest person in the room might be the one with the most valuable insights. Mike stops by her station during the dinner rush, not to check her work but to learn from her technique. How do you stay so calm when orders back up? I watch you, and it's like you've got some kind of system for managing pressure. Practice, Maria says simply. Different kind of pressure, same principles. Focus on what you can control. Execute one task at a time. Trust your training. She doesn't mention the mortar attacks or the convoy ambushes. Some lessons translate without requiring the full story. The customers don't know they're eating food prepared by a Bronze Star recipient. Don't know their server was trained by someone who fed thousands of soldiers in combat zones. Don't know the woman expediting their orders once managed supply lines through Taliban territory. They just know their food arrives perfectly prepared. Their service runs smoothly. Their experience exceeds expectations. That's how real strength operates. Quietly, competently, without need for recognition or applause. Making everything work better while staying invisible to people who only see the surface. Derek's transformation from mocker to student reminds us that courage often wears ordinary clothes. That the person you underestimate might be the one who saves your life when everything falls apart. That immigrants and veterans carry invisible strength, hidden competence, untold stories of leadership under conditions most of us will never face. The fire revealed Maria's true capabilities, but they were always there. In every perfect knife cut, every flawless execution under pressure, every quiet moment of competence that went unrecognized. The hero was hiding in plain sight, waiting for the moment when being quiet was no longer an option. Heroes walk among us every day. In kitchens and offices, in schools and hospitals, in every workplace where people show up and do excellent work without demanding credit. Veterans transitioning to civilian life. Immigrants rebuilding their futures. Quiet professionals whose strength doesn't need to prove itself until it must. Subscribe to see more stories of hidden courage revealed.